Hey, Mr. James from Charm City Karate here, talking about TUF 19, Penn versus Edgar. So, this week they start off interviewing the coaches a little. You get to see them talking about their assistant coaches. BJ Penn seems very relaxed. I guess that's kind of BJ Penn. He talks about his coaches. He's got a lot of accomplished guys for his coaches. He seems mostly interested in his fighters, seeing those guys do well, which is really cool. Frankie Edgar talked a lot about competing against Penn. It sounds kind of like it's more about him than it does his fighters, but we'll see. You know, it really comes down to how do they actually coach their guys, how does it turn out. He brought his personal coaches, you know, the guys that train him, so that could be a big deal. So we'll see. We didn't really get to see a whole lot of training in this one, just because, you know, first real episode of them in the house, show you the house. You listen to the two fighters talk a lot of smack, which is always funny because they haven't really done anything yet. So you get a lot of that, I will die before I lose. It's all for my family. Whatever, dude. Although to be truthful, these guys had a lot of heart. The fight was Pendred versus Urbina. So Mexico versus Ireland. Two countries that love to fight, baby. Long tradition of hard fighters from both countries. The stare down at the weigh-ins, that was pretty good. Although in their post stare down interviews, those guys had vastly different interpretations of how that went. So, kind of funny. Tail of the tape before the fight, virtually identical. I think you had like an inch or two difference. Not worth worrying about, really. Same age, same weight. I think Pendred had him by a pound. Woohoo! Round one, Pendred controls the grappling game very early. They go up against the gate, up against the fence. Up against the fence, it's all Pendred. Whenever they get off of it, Urbina owns the striking game. Urbina manages to stun Pendred pretty early in the round. Chases him to the ground. Now, kids, remember, I said this a lot before. You have to dance with who brung you. What do I mean by that? I mean this. If you hit somebody and you stun them, take a deep breath, slow yourself down mentally, because you can be all excited and like going crazy and sped up. Take a deep breath, slow yourself down mentally, continue the strikes, put them away. If you go for a clinch and you get a sweet takedown on a guy and you get control and maybe you get his back, go for a sub. Right? You're dominating him with the grappling. You go for the sub. You don't suddenly switch gears. You stun him with a punch and then you try to get a guillotine choke or go for a leg lock. You don't get him down on the ground, take his back, and then try to punch him out. All right? What happens 99 times out of 100 when you switch gears like that, it gives the guy a chance to recover. All right? Think about boxing. You see a guy take a hard shot, and he's like, what's he always try to do? Grapple, tie the guy's arms up so he doesn't get hit anymore, and recover. So when you're going for a sub, guy's trying to grapple you anyway. He's practiced that. Oh, he tucks his head in, he gets all sweet and tight and close, and muffles up the grapple. All right? A guy who's not doing too good in the grappling, he would like to get hit a little bit. Maybe he can get back to his feet and get away from you. Oh, yeah. Stay with who brung you. All right, so Urbina's mistake, he stuns Pendred. They're on the ground, and instead of just going for a dominant position and punching his fool head off, he tries to go for a sub. First, he tries to get like a guillotine. Then he's going for some kind of fancy armbar. I don't know if he was going for like a key lock or a Kimura. Anyway, it turned into a mess. He got nothing. And Pendred gets out of round one. Another key note, this could become very important later. Urbina cannot hear his corner. A lot of guys get like this when they fight. It's not that their corner isn't loud enough, it's they just cannot process their corner. They get like auditory exclusion when they fight. So their corner's over there giving them really good advice. Like you could hear his corner yelling, knee on belly, knee on belly. So they wanted to make that transition. He can't hear it. He's not doing it. Blown opportunity. If he'd gone knee on belly, he could have made that transition to full mount, probably punched him out. Didn't do it. Oh well, end of round. You know, there was also a time in there where they did get back to their feet briefly, and Urbina was showboating because he owned the striking game, and then he paid. Urbina also got a couple of decent takedowns later in the round. I don't know why he would bother doing takedowns. Urbina was owning the striking game. Silly for him to look for takedowns against Pendred. Own the striking game, keep the striking game. Anyway, so Pendred survived round 1. Round 2, Pendred goes for a spinning heel kick to the head. I don't know what he's thinking. Didn't really work out for him. Then he gets a really sweet takedown on Urbina. Most of the round spent against the cage. Broken up by a couple of quick flurries every time they get a little separation. And there's some bad submission attempts. So, guess who controls the fight while they're pressed up against the cage and laying on the floor? Pendred, that's right. Pendred's also throwing some knees to the body and a couple of good ones to the head. You could hear one of them crack really nice. Yeah. Urbina's trying to play this little game where he puts his hand on the mat so he doesn't get a knee to the head. And then he picks his hand up off the mat so he can try and do something about being in this awful grappling position. Pendred is basically timing that out or yanking him up so his hand's not touching the mat and throwing the knee. His corner keeps yelling, "That's a knee to the head, ref." Yeah, you know what? You got a good ref in there. He's not buying it. He does warn Pendred when it's close, but it's working out okay. What Urbina really should have been working on is how to get out of that position instead of how to try and draw the cheap foul and get the ref to let him out of that position. So that's what he should have done. Anyway, end of the round. Pretty sure they're going to go for 3. Urbina wins the first because he had that nice stun and he controlled most of the first round. Pendred controlled the entire second round. It's kind of a snoozer. You know, a guy can dominate on the ground and still be boring. Guys can dominate on the ground and be awesome. You guys that like to get on the ground, go back and watch some early or mid-career highlights of Tito Ortiz. He had some really, really good ground and pound. You know what I mean? He'd get a guy on the ground and just beat him ugly. He didn't get on the ground and just hold their head. It's not a date. All right, round 3. Pendred dominates. Again, he's got a formula for this, and he knows that Urbina's got nothing for it. It's called the grab you, slam you up against the cage, and hold you on the ground by your head. He doesn't try to get around and get the back. He doesn't really try to flip Urbina on his back. He doesn't really try to do a whole lot except hold him on the ground and throw some weak punches to the ribs and a couple of knees. Urbina can't get out of it. That's the key. If Urbina knew how to get out of that awful, awful front headlock, it could have been a totally different fight. Or if Urbina knew how to spin when he was up against the cage so that he could get back off of the cage and, I don't know, go back to striking, it could have been a very different fight. And then Pendred gets one really nice takedown late in the round. Pendred wins by decision. Next week's fight is Spohn versus Monagahan, light heavyweights. I hope to see somebody get a really crushing knockout. But that's me. So, leave me your thoughts and comments, and I'll see you guys next week for review of Ultimate Fighter Season 19 Penn versus Edgar. Till then, be cool. I'm Mr. James from Charm City Karate. Have a great day.